Welcome everyone to the excuse me, November 9th, 2023 meeting of the Camarillo and Oxnard Airport Authorities. Supervisor Lopez, would you please pledge allegiance?
Happy to. If you're able to stand, please join us. Ready, begin.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chairs, before we proceed, we just wanted to remind everyone to speak clearly and loud into the mic for our viewers online.
Can we get a roll call?
For Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long,
Here.
Vice Chair Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Here.
Mayor Susan Santangelo,
Here.
Councilmember Martita Martinez Bravo,
Here.
and Chair Scott Bear.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum for Camarillo. For Oxnard Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long,
Here.
Vice Chair Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Bert Perello, Councilmember Gabe Turan,
Here.
and Chair Eugene Fussell. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, next up is our review of the agenda. Do we have any changes?
Chairs, we do not have any changes to the agenda at this time.
So up next is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, Camarillo Authority.
I'll move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call?
For Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long,
Yes.
Vice Chair Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Susan Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Martita Martinez Bravo,
Yes.
and Chair Scott Bear.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Can we get a motion for approval of the minutes from Oxnard?
So moved.
Second.
Second, roll call.
For Oxnard Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long,
Yes.
Vice Chair Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gabe Turan,
Yes.
and Chair Eugene Fussell.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Next up, public comments. Do we have any public comments?
We do not have anything online. We just have a script. Oh. We're going to go ahead and read a script for the public comment period. To members of the public who wish to address the authorities tonight with live public comments on any agenda item, please visit vcairports.org/meeting calendar for participation instruction, streaming links, meeting IDs, and passcodes. For in-person public comment, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the secretary before the end of the public comment period for items listed on the agenda. Speakers will be called to speak after the agenda item is presented. For remote participants via Zoom or telephone, please accept the prompt to be promoted as speaker and unmute your mic when it is your turn to speak. In-person and remote participants will have 3 minutes to make their comment.
John G., if you can hear us, go ahead and unmute and you'd have 3 minutes to speak.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that. Hi, Keith. This is John Greenwood. I wanted to first off, I want to, as usual, thank you for always respecting the 1976 Joint Powers Agreement. I think you deserve the respect of our entire community for that. At last night's City Council meeting, we had 3 ladies speak from the residents group, and I was glad that you showed up. You got to hear a lot of what they said. And after Ms. Dow got done speaking and asking the city council if they heard her, you stepped up and actually said that you did hear her. I think those remarks were actually directed at the city council. the group doesn't feel that they're getting adequate representation or effort from the city council in the problems they're having with the airport. I don't know how much the city council can do. I think we've been through this, but they felt the need to raise their voice a little, and that was what was done. I think it's great you showed up, gave a brief sort of synopsis of what's going on with the noise study. And part of what they were complaining about and part of what's got them upset is the projections in the noise study of the number of jets that are forecast to be filling our skies in the next 5 to 20 years. And right, if you look at the numbers, rightfully so. Those numbers more than double the amount of jets. That's like 50 more jets a day. And I don't know if you got that out of what they were saying, but I thought you needed to know that as well as everything else going on with the noise study. I know that you're working on what you can do to mitigate the noise, but that is also an issue as people read this study. You want to try to mitigate perhaps the number of jets. I know that you've made the statement that growth will, that as the community grows, the airport will grow, but also flying jets over our community won't help us grow, it'll help us die. Ventura may grow, Oxnard may grow, other parts of the community may grow, but they're not having jet pilots treat their neighborhoods like, I don't have a better way to put it, like a cat treats a litter box. And anyway, that was sort of the gist that was there. Since you didn't really comment on what they said, but gave the synopsis, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. They were really wanting to address the Camarillo City Council, but it's good that you were there also. I want to say thank you, and that's all I got to say.
Thank you, John. Do we have any other public comments?
There are no other public comments.
All right, next on the agenda, item 6A, rejection of the bids for the airport rotating beacon. Do we have a report? Ms. Powers.
Good evening, Chair Bear and authority members, excuse me. Yes, tonight I'm here bringing you an item. We currently have an airport rotating beacon that is located atop the water tower here at Camarillo Airport. That water tower does not belong to the airport, and due to the age of the existing beacon equipment, we're looking to replace the beacon and relocate it to a location that is within our control. And so this is a priority project for us that we took out to bid, and we ended up receiving or opening bids on October 3rd. We received one bid in the amount of $495,495. And this was submitted by Valentini Corporation, which is doing business as Royal Electric. Royal Electric has been a great subcontractor on several of our airport jobs recently. However, the bid is 260% over the engineer's estimate, which came in at $190,055. Because this greatly exceeds the engineer's estimate and our project budget, we're requesting your commission recommend the Board of Supervisors approve the rejection of the bid, of all bids, authorization for the Director of Airports to re-advertise for bids, and authorization for the Director of Airports to furnish essentially the bid documents for the contract documents to previous purchasers without charge if it's appropriate. We're looking at whether we're going to go out to bid exactly as we did with the documents, or whether we're going to adjust how we adjust the project to maybe make it come in line better with our estimate and our budget. I'm happy to receive any comments or answer any questions.
I have a couple of questions. Director Freitas and I have actually talked about this several times. Are we looking at possibility of general services being able to, we, the Department of Airports would buy the equipment, general services would install it? Is that still an option?
That is one option. Yes. So we're going to be exploring what will make the most sense, because the equipment itself is actually the total equipment cost is under 100,000. We may just purchase it ourselves and go out to bid for the installation. However, there's always it's a balancing act. If you purchase equipment, that makes the contractor isn't necessarily responsible for the condition, and you can end up with, there's pros and cons for each way. So that's what we're going to be weighing as we go forward to complete this important project.
And another direct question, another method that the director and I had discussed was possibly amending one of the existing construction contracts to add this to that, add the beacon to that project. Is that still being considered?
I'm not familiar with what contract we would amend for this at this time, but we definitely, as far as I'm concerned, all options are on the table. We're just going to look, we're going to start working our way through and finding out what makes the most sense to end up with a quality project for a reasonable, fair cost.
And that's exactly the thrust of my question.
Yes.
Is, what's the best way to do this, the most economically feasible way to do this, where we're not feeling like the single contractor who's bidding is trying to make an extra few bucks that the project doesn't warrant. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tron.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the update on this. Just so that it can be stated for the public record, I'm just curious about the bid that came in. Was most of that weight in the cost of labor, or was it materials, rental of equipment? Do we have an idea of kind of where the discrepancy fell from our engineer's estimate to what the actual bid was?
Yeah, so if we could go to the next slide, please. Well, you can make out most of the numbers. I apologize that it is a little bit. Oh, right. Pull it back. Yeah, so line item 5 and line item, essentially the beacon itself, the items aren't separated from the installation, but we are aware, we have a recent quote from the manufacturer of the equipment. So we know that that the cost is sometimes 3 times what the equipment costs, and we don't believe that's the value of the installation. So we have looked at where this comes in. We don't know if maybe there's some confusion. We're looking to install a 75-foot tip down tower, and there's only one manufacturer that there's recently a tip down tower that was approved by the FAA for 75 feet. So it is approved, where it's available. We know what the cost is, and I can only say that I think that perhaps there's more profit in it than we think is fair.
Okay, that's fair. And I know this is what's going on the recording, what we're seeing here on the screen. And just so folks know, if they're unable to see that on their screens later, or if they're watching this in the future, this is an agenda packet on page 17 if they want to see kind of a higher resolution or want to zoom in or print out that page for inspection. So, all right, well, thank you very much for sharing that info.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Grillo.
Question. We need to have a light on top of the water tower? And if we do, is it for safety?
It is.
Okay, so if we move the light from the water tower, are we gonna not have a light on top of the water tower?
No, the plan will be that we will commission a new one and we will have it fully installed before we decommission the existing beacon. So there won't be any loss of use.
So the, just so I could clarify, so the light on a water tower is a safety issue to let somebody know that there's something that high at water towers?
So we're talking about two different things. The beacon itself is a navigation aid. It flashes, so pilots can go towards that beacon as a navigation to know where the airports are. Separate from that, for tall water towers, we also have red lights. You see obstruction lights, those are red on tall buildings and structures. So two separate things. The red lights will remain on the water tower. That's a separate hazard notification as opposed to the beacon or the directional navigation.
Thank you. That answered half my question. The other half is this: do we need to have the light, the beacon light, that high in the air?
We do not.
We do not. How high does it have to be?
Well, in this case, the location that we're going to have is it needs to make sure that it doesn't impact the air traffic control tower. And we also are able to adjust the beam so that we minimize impact to residents on the hill behind, north of the airport.
Asking because I don't know. Would it be simply as putting up a radio antenna with a speaker on top of a radio antenna? A tall radio?
Yes,
antenna?
it's a 75-foot metal, somewhat narrow tower that is able to pivot and tip down for maintenance so that it can be maintained, or the beacon can be taken off at ground level. So it's certainly safer for staff as well, because the tower itself is well over 100 feet tall. So there's all sorts of safety climbs and expenses and maintaining the annual checks and the training involved to be able to maintain the airport beacon.
And with that tower that would be able to come down for safety reasons, which makes a lot of sense to me, being high up in the air, it's not a lot of fun. That's the estimate, it's 190 grand.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Powers.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion on the,
I'll motion to approve staff recommendation.
I'll second. Get a roll call.
For Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Susan Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Martina Martinez Bravo,
Yes.
and Chair Scott Barron.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously 5-0.
And the chair, this is Dave. Just wanted to do a check-in. We didn't have any public comments, but we'll keep prompting
Great.
for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next up, for both authorities, an update on the Part 150 noise compatibility study.
Yes. So I believe
My mistake, we're on the airport layout.
it's still me, so. Thank you. So I'm happy to be here tonight to provide an update on the Camarillo Airport Layout Plan study. And really what we're focused on to share is about what's next. If we could go to the next slide. Jumping right into it, we actually have our second public outreach information workshop next week on Tuesday, November 14th. We're going to be holding this at the Camarillo Library Community Room, and from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And we hope that we are able to get a lot of the community there that has questions or concerns, and we'll be able to share additional information for as the study has been progressing. We could go to the next slide. So next, I just sort of wanted to show you an overview of the airport planning process for this study. We are, and Dave, if you're able to do the circle, we're going to do a where we're here, little red circle. There we are. So we're in November. We're approximately a little over halfway through the study process. And we're anticipating that this study is going to wrap up in mid 2024. And then I'll actually talk about a couple highlights to make things easier for people to understand. So a couple of our accomplishments, we kicked off the study and gathered information in order to feed into the materials and be able to share those for the first public outreach that we had in April. We introduced the study and we provided chapters and information on airport inventory and aviation forecasts. After that April meeting and any comments received, we submitted the aviation forecast to the FAA for approval, which was the next needed step, and they approved those forecasts in June of 2023. And that allowed us to continue moving forward to develop the next set of chapter developments. And that is what we're about to share next week at our second public outreach meeting. And we'll be focused on facility requirements and airport development alternatives. From there, after we finish that portion of sharing these next chapters, the Kaufman Associates will be working to produce a draft final airport layout plan document based on the chapters and feedback. And we are estimating that they're going to have that available in February of 2024. We then plan to have our third and final public outreach session in March of 24, we're estimating. And on our plan is that that Kaufman Associates will, before both the Aviation Commission and the authority, summarize the draft final document and share that information so that after that meeting, we will be on a path to submit the final document to the FAA for approval. We're aiming for May of 2024 to allow the FAA to also have their time period to review and comment so that if we need to make any final changes, we do have the grant and the project study expires in August of 2024. And normally it's a little bit of, we need to have our project close out a couple months ahead of that time period so that they can start processing everything. I'm sorry. The winds have been getting me. We really are we're a little bit past halfway. We're marching forward. By mid 2024. We'll be submitting this to the FAA and trying to wrap up this study and be able to finalize things. This actual document, other than bringing it before your bodies and then looking for FAA approval, will be final at that point. It is not a document that goes before the Board of Supervisors because we aren't doing any significant changes to the airport's current role. We're maintaining our current role. And with that, we're just updating our forecasts and updating our capital improvement plans in order to keep us eligible for federal funding. And I'm happy to receive any comments or questions.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. So from the submission of the final document to the FAA, what is the timeline, the turnaround for any feedback from them? And what happens if I suspect that it would take more than a month. So what happens if we need to do more work and the grant is closed out?
So we, the goal is that we have that the document that we submit as a draft final to the FAA should be the culmination of our comments, and the community and airports feedback will be. It won't be unlike the noise studies. It won't be an appendix, but the airport is using that as a guide to see if, as we go through development alternatives, we're going to be listening and answering questions, and if adjustments are needed in selecting our preferred option, that's where that will show up in the final study. The FAA has the ability, once we turn it into them and submit it, it really is on their timeline. And And so we will be in the midst of grant season where they're actually providing grants to different airport sponsors. So it could take a while. We won't be in jeopardy with our grant as long as we've submitted the project closeout and we've complied with all the requirements. The FAA can take as long as they want.
Hello.
Do you anticipate any negative from the community? Have you got any inkling of any negative from the community in this matter?
Well, I think that, the biggest concern, I mean, we're talking about the Camarillo Airport layout
Right.
plan update. And what we've heard from the community, some of the biggest concerns is related to jet traffic and noise created from jets. So,
Yeah, and that's a very good question. I think one of the misnomers in this process that we go through is this forecasting that we're doing. It's estimating what is going to be in the future. And we're a transportation system. It's like estimating the traffic on Highway 101 the next 5, 10, 20 years. It's the same for us. We just happen to be a mile-long piece of pavement that planes land and take off on as opposed to a roadway. So I think that's the misnomer is people think that we're marketing for more airplanes and things like that. We're just projecting what may be coming, and we have to plan for it. And I've been doing this for 30 plus years. Rarely do the projections, again, you're forecasting extreme cases so you can plan for it, and rarely does that happen. In 30 years, I've seen those forecasts. Airports typically do not meet those forecasts.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you, Keith.
Ms. Powers? Any public comments, Mr. Nathan?
Chair, we do not have anybody indicating they wish to speak on this topic.
In which case, do we have a motion?
Motion, staff recommendations, it's receive and file.
Can we get a roll call?
For Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long,
Yes.
Vice Chair Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Susan Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Martina Martinez Bravo,
Yes.
and Chair Scott Bear.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Camping out tonight?
It's my favorite thing.
6C, update on the Part 150 noise study. Ms. Powers again.
So it's my pleasure to be here again and also to just introduce Kaufman Associates, which who is running both noise studies for the Department of Airports, and they will be sharing a high-level overview of the noise exposure contours and summarizing a few of the changes that have been made as a result of the comments received through the study that made on the noise exposure maps. Thank you.
Take it away, Corey.
All right, chairs and authority members. My name is Corey Lewis, and I'm with Kaufman Associates, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you this evening. So I have a few prepared slides, and I'll be able to answer questions at the conclusion of the slides. Dave, if you could advance 2 slides, please. All right. So we're in the midst of our Part 150 studies for both airports. The studies began at the beginning of 2023 in January. We had our first public meeting in March of 2023. And since that time, we conducted noise measurements in May, June, July, and August. And then we had our second round of meetings in September of 2023. Dave, if you could advance, please. The topic of the meeting were chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is the methodology section, which describes the noise inputs. We have a graphic here that provides an overview of those inputs. So the noise exposure contours are based on flight tracks, which is where aircraft operate. The number of operations at the airport, those include FAA approved forecasts, We also have flight profiles, terrain information, time of day for when aircraft operate, and all of that is put through the Aviation Environmental Design Tool software, and the output is noise exposure contours. With those noise exposure contours, we're able to use FAA's land use compatibility criteria, and the contours are then overlain on land use mapping to determine if there are any impacts when considering FAA's compatibility thresholds. So if you could advance, please. Throughout this process, in our public meetings, we emphasize that the Department of Airport recognizes that some community members may be disturbed by noise at levels lower than FAA's guidelines, and that additional efforts will be made in the second phase of the study, which is the preparation of the noise compatibility program, to identify ways to potentially reduce noise exposure in the community. Can you advance, please? So as I mentioned, based on the inputs earlier, we developed noise exposure contours. We developed 3 sets of contours. So there's an existing condition, a 2027, which is a 5-year condition, and also a 2042 condition, which is the long range contour. So here we have the Camarillo noise exposure contours. The contours that are shown in a solid line, those go out to the 65 CNEL noise exposure contour, and that is FAA's threshold of compatibility. We've also, for land use compatibility planning purposes, have shown the 60 CNEL noise exposure contour. So, and that's the dashed contour that's being highlighted with the cursor right now. So the first two, the 2022 and 2027, those will be the airport's official noise exposure maps, and those will be submitted to FAA for consideration. The 60 CNEL noise exposure contour is not not used for compatibility or for the noise exposure maps, but is used for land use compatibility planning purposes, and that will come into play in phase 2 of the study, the noise compatibility program development. If you could advance, please. So using FAA's land use compatibility criteria table found in Part 150, as I mentioned, we overlay those contours on the land use mapping, and through that process, we determined that the areas within the 65 CNEL are largely compatible based on those criteria. We were using the mapping, we did identify some 2 schools that are located southeast of the offices there at Camarillo Airport. So those are part of schools. The actual structure of the schools are not within 65 CNEL noise contour. Next slide, please. So similar process at Oxnard Airport. We did the same time horizons. So here's our 2022, 2027, and 2042 contours. Similarly, we have the solid line on the inside, which is the 65 CNEL noise exposure contour. And then one thing to note is that as Dave has transitioned through the slides, you can see that the contours increase in size, and that is largely due to the forecast increase in operations at the airport. At Oxnard, in all 3 scenarios, there are residences located directly north of the 25 end that are within the 65 CNEL noise contour. There are approximately 23 residences within the contour there. So this table summarizes the land uses, and actually in addition to those houses are actually in both the 65 and the 70 CNEL noise contour. So that's the information shown in the center column there. And it's a mix of single family and multifamily residences there. Advance, please. In addition to developing the noise exposure contours, we conducted noise measurements, as I mentioned, in May, June, July, and August. So with that information, we were able to listen to events that triggered on the monitors and to verify whether or not they were aircraft events. So there was a mix of aircraft and non-aircraft events. So we were able to calculate CNEL values associated with the aircraft event data, and we're able to compare that to the modeled values at each of the locations. And through that process, we were able to determine that no modeling adjustments were needed. This exhibit shows the 8 locations for the noise monitors for Camarillo Airport. And we were able to do that through coordination with local residents primarily. And you can see that they were kind of scattered throughout the study area. And then also one was placed on airport property. Similarly, at Oxnard, we had a variety of locations. Here we were able to secure 9 locations, and the location of which are depicted on the exhibit. As I mentioned earlier, through this process, we were able to determine that no modeling adjustments were needed. So, as Aaron mentioned, we received comments through this process. We received a comment letter from the city of Oxnard, from Oxnard Shores, from Ventura County Transportation Commission, and also several comments from the public. Just giving an overview, several of the comments related to land use mapping, specifically to the Oxnard Part 1 or the city of Oxnard general plan, and a couple of approved developments, Teal Club and Fort Portofino. There were also some requests for clarification on references to regulations, also requests for clarification on noise monitoring information, including additional columns to be added and some clarification and additional tables for the noise monitoring data. And several of the comments from the public were more would be classified as more of complaints rather than anything specific to the document. But in going through those documents, or through those comments that we received, we determined that no changes to the NEM inputs or the findings of the noise exposure map documentation would be needed. So for where do we go from here? So at this point, we are finalizing the documentation. We have made revisions to the documents based on those comments that we received, and then we'll ultimately prepare those documents for Keith's signature and submittal to FAA. FAA will consider those for acceptance and respond. So the anticipated timeline for that submittal is December of 2023, and anticipate response and some additional coordination with FAA in 2024. Meanwhile, we'll begin work on the noise compatibility program, which is the second phase of the Part 150 study, and that will include consideration of noise abatement alternatives, land use alternatives, and program management measures. We anticipate our next round of meetings, or we anticipate conducting a listening session with the public in the first quarter of 2024, and followed by a planning advisory committee meeting in May of 2024, and ultimately completing the noise compatibility program phase of the study by the end of 2024. Be happy to answer any questions about the Part 150 studies.
Corey, I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. You might not be the right person to ask this question, but after the study is done, will we be able to use this model? I'm certain the public would like to know the answer to this. I'm going to preface this by an experience I had. I was flying out of Santa Monica, and 2 days later, I got a letter saying that I had violated the area because I was above that 65 CNEL. And I'm wondering, for the public, will we be able to use this modeling? And when somebody violates the noise, will we be able to contact that person and do whatever, like fine or what have you? Because I was threatened that if I did that again, I'd get fined.
So the noise information and the noise mapping that we have in the Part 150 studies, that is based on a cumulative noise metric. And the situation that you are referring to is based on a single event noise. So those are not the same types of metrics. And so the answer would be no, you would not be able to use the modeling that we've developed for this Part 150 study to take any sort of enforcement action.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I had a question and I just want to understand this clearly. So it sounds like what the community is reporting as a disturbance is lower than the threshold that the FAA indicates. Am I summarizing that correctly?
Yes. So the Part 150 process uses the 65 CNEL noise exposure contour, and that is ultimately, in some cases, used for mitigation, eligibility for mitigation measures and mitigation funding through FAA. At both airports, many of the complaints or comments about noise come from outside the 65 CNEL. And so that's why we've tried to communicate many times with the public that, in the next step, in the next phase, the noise compatibility program, we will work with the public to hopefully identify some other means for reducing noise impacts.
And a follow-up question. So after, sorry, it was hard to hear. So after the study is completed, is there any thoughts as to the continuation of monitoring, or will any of that be needed? What are your thoughts on that?
So that will ultimately, be up to the county to determine whether or not, it makes sense to do additional monitoring. The monitoring just identifies or can be used to identify the amount of noise, aircraft noise on a given day at a given location. So, some of the information that we've developed through this study can actually be used for land use planning purposes and looking, beyond that 65 CNAL noise exposure contour.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you.
I'm going to direct this to you, Keith, because I'm not happy with the answer I got from Corey. Yes, sir. We're spending $700, at least the FAA is spending $707,000 to do this study. So when the study is over, are we just going to continue to act as we've been doing? Are we going to be to use the results of the study, which in my mind, in my way of thinking, would be that we would install some monitors, and when people violate, then we can address it or do something about it. Otherwise, we spent $770,000 for a study to tell us something we already know.
I would respond this way, is that monitoring could be implemented. We could, and there are airports out there that do that. You've heard us talk over the years, at least the last few years while I've been here, that we can't just implement new rules and regulations and enforcement. We're precluded from doing that by the FAA. Mm-hmm. So what you'll see, however, and why we're really doing this process, this study for both airports, is in the end, as Corey, Mr. Lewis had mentioned, in the end, the last part of the year, next year, we're going to be going through the NCP, Noise Compatibility Program. That's where we developed a laundry list of things that we can do within the rules of the FAA to implement noise mitigation. We're already seeing some of that happen specifically at Oxnard, a little bit here at Camarillo. We've got some work to do still at Camarillo. But flight patterns, altitudes, fly friendly in getting pilots not to fly late at night, certain hours of the day, all of those things. But to implement we're going to put noise monitors, and if you exceed a certain decibel level, we're actually precluded from doing that through the federal process.
Why did these people send me a letter when I flew out of Santa Monica and they said your airplane's making too much noise?
Good question, and that comes up very frequently. Is much like Camarillo has a joint powers agreement that limits what was happening in the country across the U.S. was airports across the country were making up new rules. So that's when the Fed stepped in in 1990, ANCA banned airports entities from making new noise rules. However, those that had rules prior to 1990 could grandfather in. So that's where you see stuff that has Santa Monica, why Camarillo has its limits on departures from midnight to 5. Ours was grandfathered in. So that's the disparity some pilots might see, but also why we can't moving forward have new rules, specific rules and regulations.
Okay. Councilmember Pro.
What specific rules does Oxnard have grandfathered in, if any?
At this point, they don't have any specific rules grandfathered in at this time. That was what was before 1990. So we don't have any. Luckily, we have great pilots that we work with, and we typically don't have nighttime issues and departure issues. There's nothing specific at this time for us.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like the other gentleman to put the slide up showing Camarillo Airport with the dings. And the reason I'm asking this question, at the public outreach meeting, there was a gentleman from Oxnard that happens to live in my neighborhood, and he was complaining about the jet traffic. That's Oxnard. Put Camarillo up, please. The jet travel change of direction. I think there was somebody from this organization was there. I think gentleman back, and he explained that there had been some sort of a slight deviation, and that's why we were hearing more jets going over the north end of town. And he had complained, and I'm wondering if a gentleman from Oxnard complained about the jets that are flying out of Camarillo making more noise, would they show up on this map indicating Camarillo, or would they show up on the map with an assumption that they were coming out of Oxnard and making noise?
No, that would fall out of Camarillo. Where the aircraft departed or arrives, that's where that noise contour is. So as it departs out over the community, then it's relative to where it's landing and taking off.
Okay, so
Not where he's calling from or where that person may live.
okay, so his claim was that he made complaints. I don't see anything that looks like a complaint, especially in the north.
Again, these are the map, these are the contours,
In the
have
area.
nothing to do with noise. That just is the noise created by aircraft operation at those two airports specifically.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
And then we get into the next half of this, again, these are the contours, then we move into the noise compatibility program. That's where we address questions like that from the community. We know that there's other noise issues outside the contours, even though they don't meet the standards for the FAA. We know that our communities have noise concerns outside these contours, and that's where we get into all the other things we're going to do.
I mean, the gentleman taught me something I was unaware of. I was unaware that there is a little bit of a direction change coming out of Camarillo to fly a little differently. And that's
Because
why
they're in line, you're right, it's about a 45. They deviate to for safety reasons to stay away from the Oxnard traffic and vice versa.
Is that some policy that's been newly put in place in the last? No, okay, all right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Mr. Toronto.
Thank you. I'm wondering if, I apologize if it was highlighted on the Gantt chart or the timeline, but is there another opportunity or opportunities for the public to receive the update to this, or another outreach opportunity that will happen in both jurisdictions in Camarillo and Oxnard?
So yes, most important is our website has all of that documentation as we progress. So that's on there, always updated. And then the next public, again, for the two noise studies, the next public interaction is expected in May of 2024, and the final is late to mid-November of 2024. So we're expecting two more opportunities as we finalize that process for the Part 150 noise studies.
All right, thank you very much for that. And I'm hoping that if there's any way we could do it, tonight's presentation, this update might be linked, or if people left us their email address or contact information that they wanted these kinds of updates, that this could be provided either on the website or a link to the website or a link to this video for folks who would be interested in this update.
Yeah, anybody who's interested should, through their elected officials or directly to the airport, can get on our mailing so that when we have news blasts, which we are sending out direct information, not only our website, but if you want, the most up to date is getting on our list. Jeanette, our PIO, is happy to, we blast out that information before the public meetings, the new documents are coming out. They have immediate heads up as soon as those documents are ready.
Okay, thank you very much.
And council member, I just remind that these meetings are recorded and are available on our website as well under the meetings tab.
Thank you.
Chair. I'm just curious, how long are the meetings kept on the website?
Our meetings go back years. I think you're talking about these meetings. I think we've got.
No, how long do we historically, after a period of time, get rid of them? Okay.
We have years worth of these kinds of meetings on that.
The council member, they're maintained on our YouTube page indefinitely.
No more comments from the authorities. Do we have any public comments?
Chair, nobody has indicated they wish to speak on this item.
Okay. We need a motion for receipt and file.
You don't need it. Yeah.
Okay. We did the last one, but if they don't need it, that's fine. For the board of supervisors, we do, but
Yeah. For receiving files, it's not necessary.
Perfect.
But we can if you choose to.
6E.
We do thank Mr. Lewis for joining us tonight. And he's dismissed.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
6E, security updates.
Chair, I think we've bypassed.
We're on
Z.
6B.
Oh, Wings over Camarillo.
Queens of Camera. So I will go through this quickly. Most of you know that we have a lot of support from the airport. We have a huge, unbelievable amount of support for the Wings over Camarillo Air Show. This year was the 42nd year that they had the air show. But there is an item in there, particularly in the performers. The last, this year and 2 years ago, they added the performance of an F-18 fighter jet into that. And those 2 years has caused our neighbors some significant concerns over noise. We also have an animal shelter here on the airport property, and that's concerning as well for those involved. So I just want to kind of report out, it's just a report out that as we progress, I've already had a sit down with the leadership of Wings over Camarillo this week, as a matter of fact, the air show boss, the director of operations, and the president, and their support of understanding that that type of airplane causes us significant concerns for our community members. And again, to put it in perspective, last year, when we didn't have the F-18, we had 2 days of air show. We had about 15 calls over concern for noise. This year, and most of you know, we only had 1 day of an air show because of the storm that we had on Sunday. We had 122 individual calls. So these weren't repeat calls. These were individuals that called 122 times. And then again, we had the calls from our animal shelter on the airport property. So moving forward, we're going to be much more cautious of the type of aircraft. We're not sure that type, new generation F-18, F-16, F-35, F-22, those might not be a great fit for us. The leadership of Wings over Camarillo is already looking maybe a partnership where they alternate with Naval Air Station, Point Mugu. So every third year have those kinds of airplanes there, and every 2 years we have the normal, at least the air shows that we've had in the past. They're less concerning for our neighbors. So a lot of work to do, and not closing the door on any specific, but we're going to be watching that in the future for those concerns. So just kind of want to update you with that. If there's any questions, I can answer that.
Keith, thank you for working on that. Just to confirm, the year that we had a significant amount of people attend the air shows it's not the year that we had the jets either, right?
So the record was last year, where they had over 120, excuse me, they had 22,000 attendees, and there was not, the FAT was not there.
Okay.
And again, out of the 42 years of the show, they've only had an F-18 2 years
Okay.
out of the 40.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank
Can I
you.
get a clarification on that? The record's 22,000
That was the last number I
for
recall.
2 days?
For over 2 days.
Over
Correct.
2 days. And then this year they had how many?
The last number I got was about 9,000 people for the one day, with again a hurricane storming out to the south. So that was a pretty good
The only
number.
reason I asked that, I don't think we can make a fair comparison for a 2-day event, how many complaints we get over a 2-day event versus a 1-day event. That's the only reason I bring that up. I think I'm correct on that.
Well, I would argue the other way is 2-day event, we only had 15 complaints, and for a 1-day event, had 122. So I would argue.
Well, then I misunderstood that. You gave me and I stand corrected.
Yes. I misspeak all the time. My wife says I mumble too much, so I'm sure it was me.
I just wanted to state for the commissioners here, that Bill Thomas did speak at RDP 21 this Thursday morning, last week. It's all blending, I'm sorry. In regards to asking the Navy base if they're looking at partnering so that the air show is, 2 years, and then the Navy base is 1 year. And therefore we can have all the big planes and all the big noise out in the Navy base. And they were nodding their heads that they're confirming that they're looking at doing an air show every 3 years. So that would actually help with the air show so that we would not have to have such large airplanes at the wings of Camarillo, which would satisfy the desires of many of the local residents and still be able to see that. So just as FYI.
Mr. Tron.
Thank you. And thank you for the update on that. I don't want it to sound like I'm asking or I'm telling the folks how to run their show. This is not my area of expertise, but I do recall from the previous conversation when they were here that there was discussion around parking and traffic. And, when I'm talking with residents about developing an area and a concern is around traffic, if there's a low foot traffic, low vehicle traffic area that you would like to be successful, by nature, you're going to have more people going to that. And so having a festival or a show like this, having people come out is great for the city. It's great for residents. It's great for the county. It's great for the airport. But I do understand the ripple effect that has on things like local access and traffic and the number of people coming. But in the previous conversation, I do recall a discussion around the limited parking and the cost of parking. And I hope that the group will consider the previous conversation we had around potential for charging for parking. That may encourage folks to carpool to the event, to pile everybody up in the Suburban or the van and come out. Because then you do have fewer cars on the road. You do pay less per person when you think about it to park a car full of people versus 2 people per car, 1 person per car. And it'll also be another source of revenue generation for folks too. And again, just my ideas that I was reminded about that I wanted to just share, but I appreciate the update on this. Thank you.
Seeing no comments from the authority, do we have, Mr. Camarillo?
when Ms. Ramirez used to sit on this board, she always talked about the concerns with the animals. And I had dog liver. Did you get any specific complaints from the animal?
Again, that there were concerns.
I understand we have the concern. Were there any specific complaints, like in the past that you had to, give things to dog to sort of sedate them and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, we worked closely, as did the Air Show folks over the last few years. They do things like adopt out for the day. They get volunteers to take the dogs. They do use medications. They do turn up white noise music. So they are doing everything they possibly can to make them most comfortable.
Thank you. That's all true. Thank you.
Mr. Nathie, do we have any public comments?
Chair Bear, we do not.
Okay, then we move on to security upgrades. Item 6E.
Wizard comes from behind the curtain here.
And the curtain. The great Oz.
All right. So, good evening, Dave Nathie, Deputy Director. Wanted to just provide a little bit of background and status for access control and security system upgrades that we're in the midst of, and provide you this brief presentation. I've included something near and dear to my heart there, a BlackBerry. I assume people recognize what that is. That was designed about the same time as the security system that we're replacing was. And the center camera there that you see kind of mounted on a stake, that's a legacy camera there. So we're bringing ourselves into the mid part of our millennium, and it's exciting to do this. So we had access control gates and motors and such that were installed back in that era. And early generation of everything, early generation of wireless networks that were really difficult to get to talk to each other and were bulky to start with and never really performed to their expectations, have been a struggle the entire time. By now, it's really just being able to open and close gates with a swipe of the card. That's all that's remaining from that legacy system. So we're definitely excited to have a different system to replace it. We're also dealing with a system that has an online database in the cloud. We pay a monthly subscription to an outside vendor that manages our list of people who are authorized to come in and out. If that's all licensed up, we pay a pretty significant amount of money on a monthly basis, annual basis. We pay the bill, but it adds up. So what we're doing for the next slide, working with Convergent, a installing firm, and Genetech, who's designed the system, the software, the hardware, et cetera, a number of cameras and digital video recording equipment, and all new database software, and installing that, and that's replacing that, and updating the entire thing. So we're excited about that. What the biggest benefit is that this is all plug and play, so it's modern. It's like iPhone 15 is modern. We have that same benefit now. If technology changes, we can just swap out components. There's none of that proprietary business any longer. Everything is it runs on good modern swappable protocols. So this will be a future-proof type of system. So we're able to add some cameras to what the old system had, and again, we could keep scaling up from there as we need. We're going to have workstations at each airport. There's going to be lower recurring costs. That monthly cost goes away because we're going to own the servers that host the database and serve that to our local network through county network infrastructure. As I said, it's swappable and expandable. So we're looking forward to that. Next. So it's not without some challenges. We've got new places to put radios. We no longer have the ability to use the water tower. We had a presentation already
that said that we had to take the beacon off. Well, we also had to take some network equipment off the top of that. So that's something where we've had to kind of redesign that system around that nice high mounted space. So what that's done is it's increased the number of network radios that need to be mounted, different locations on private hangars in a couple of cases, putting things where they haven't been yet. So overcoming a little bit of feeding power to it, looking at different airspace requirements from FAA approvals and things like that. We also had a fire in the terminal building at Oxnard. That's a location where we intended to put a server and other kinds of equipment. So that put us on a delay from that standpoint. And so coming up, we'll have our final change order. We'll square up all the equipment that we need to make the system work and get all the approvals we need. We expect that hardware is going to get installed within the next number of weeks, and then we'll be into a process of migrating the database to the new system, getting some training done, and we assume that we'll have a phased cutover of all the gates. We won't close them all at the same time. We'll do a couple at a time that are down. So tenants may have to go into a different gate from time to time, but it should be painless. And we expect everything to be changed over by the end of March, at what point we can close the project out. So that is the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Will this require the issuance of new gate cards for tenants?
Same gate cards. Yep, that stuff is all. I mean, we're able to keep the pedestals, the swiping, where you put the card against the reader. In some cases, the actual plastic thing that you place it against will be swapped out. Some other weathered components at those same locations will be swapped out. But no, the cards can remain with you. If you love it, you keep it.
Mr. Camarillo.
You mentioned that there's going to be some radio stuff having come off the water tower. Is there a problem with the airport and the owners of the water tower?
Well, it's an added expense. We'd pay rent to have the equipment up there, but we've already taken it off. What all it did was cause us to reconfigure how the radio beams get bounced around, the network signal gets bounced around. So it's a speed bump, but not a real impediment.
Is the water tower used for the purpose it was built?
To deliver water?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
So it's just empty.
It is.
Is there a concern that the airport may want that taken down?
It's not an airport issue per se. We're fine with however that's disposed. If it remains, it's a nice landmark. If it needs to come down to suit the property owner's needs, that's what it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Turan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this update. I know when we talk about security items, I was taking notes. And by the way, I'm not texting here tonight. I'm taking notes because I don't have my laptop, so it's all on my notes app.
BlackBerry?
Yeah, I actually had a Palm Pilot back then, so that dates me. So, looking at this, though, I understand with security, I wanted to be very intentional about how I word my questions, just knowing. But if I step over a line, please feel free to say that we can't answer to that level of detail. But looking at a couple of things here. First, the subscription service that you said that we have been paying monthly, how long has that been in place?
It's been, the company's called Brevo. I don't know exactly when it started, but it's really been integral to the system. So pretty early on.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was kind of the old model, is a subscription. And, rather than buy your own servers because they were expensive, storage was expensive, you would just pay a monthly fee. But the price of all of that hardware has come down so we can take command of it.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And looking at the modernized equipment we'll be getting, and again, I want to be intentional about how I ask this. Do any of these have the ability for later upgrading or current upgrading to be able to read license plates or have facial recognition if that were ever needed?
The system would, the cameras we ordered do not,
Okay, I see.
but yes, if something were to be specified by, future administration or boards, that would be a desirable feature that the system would be able to expand to accommodate that
Okay,
without having a total redesign.
of course, that's great. The system has the capacity and the infrastructure to do that. I see. Okay. And then I'm assuming we'd have recording redundancy in that where things are either saved locally in the servers. Are we having cloud recording also? I'm just wondering about redundancy of the whatever the cameras pick up. Just we have the example here of the terminal catching on fire. There was a physical server that was housed there and that were destroyed. We did have redundancy in place for any things that were stored there, correct?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that. If something were, let me find out how the cloud backup might work to see if that's actually something that's a vulnerability. I don't believe so. We do have two servers. I'm not sure just how much they are going to be sharing across county networks. I know that was a concern for them, the bandwidth, that pushing a bunch of data and video data across county networks between them. But that's a good question. I can get back to you.
Okay, no, that's helpful. Thank you. And my last question regarding the card readers, I'm assuming those operate off RFID. Just you swipe it and, or is it a barcode?
Yeah, no, it's just the regular Prox cards. They're pretty simple.
Okay, and with the system we're going to, do you know if there is accounting for to mitigate the potential for RFID sniffing or someone trying to maliciously duplicate a card by standing in proximity to someone who's swiping their card?
I'm going to plead no knowledge of that. It's pretty low tech. It's probably the lowest tech feature of the whole system.
Okay.
How you swipe a card. But.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine if it's a more modern version of what we've had or the infrastructure behind it, if we keep the modules, okay, but what's behind it, I think if that had some sort of mitigation to prevent that, I just think that I know that the stakes here are differing in levels about who wants to access what on our airports, but there are certainly technologies today where someone could go outside your house and with a tool, a wireless tool, capture the transponder information from your keyless fob for your car and then go start your car. And so I'm just wondering if we had kind of those things accounted for in this system upgrade.
Well, it's disappointing to hear we live in that world. I would say that the vendor that we've selected to make the design and implement the design also works for LAX. So I'd say what's good for LAX is good for us.
Great.
So that's how I'd answer that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And again, I wanted to be mindful about how I was asking because I don't want to give folks ideas or expose things that might be vulnerabilities, but it sounds like we've had a really good, thoughtful walk through all of these items. And I think most of these modern technologies that are, we're getting installed probably have these mitigations in place. But I just wanted to ask those so that we're, we do have them on the radar, so to speak.
I appreciate the thoughtful questions.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Perella, with respect to the sheriff department having an operation here, do they have anything special, better than what we are looking at getting around their facility?
Well, yeah, that's for the sheriff to discuss. They don't share that with us. So.
If they have something, well, I hope that you do discuss it. If they have something better, do we need to look at it? That's all. I'm not, whether it's an inexpensive car or a fancy ass airplane. I mean, the security.
That's true. It's the same company that put in the jail system. So yeah, we're not going to comment from here about what the sheriff has.
Okay, well, and the only comment, not a derogatory at all, not derogatory. I can buy a fancy Ford and I can buy an inexpensive Ford. So Ford Motor Company is making, cars. We can get a really nice one. We can get one that's not so nice.
Yeah,
So I can't make an assumption that it's because of support I'm getting.
Sure. Well, your board for Oxnard approved about $225,000. I think that was about the number for that system. So that's a pretty nice car.
All right. I appreciate the analogy. Thank you.
Do we have any public comment on security?
We do have one public comment. Mr. Sanada, if you want to unmute your microphone.
I
And-
believe I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, and we will go ahead and start the timer.
All right. Actually, I'd like to comment about the previous topic on the F-18 and the air show. Most people that viewed the air show in my circle thought that that was the absolute best part of the air show, the most thrilling. And I'm wondering if the decision regarding the F-18 and future air shows might be somehow put to a vote of some kind. I would imagine that the tens of thousands of people in attendance and even more viewing the air show from the outside would vote in favor of having the F-18 in the air show versus the 100 or so that didn't like it. So that's the question I'm posing to the authority.
Yeah, Mr. Snyder, thank you for the comment. We'll register that. We won't react to it from here. It's not on the agenda for that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Nathan. Next up, from the Communications and Engagement Manager.
Good evening to you all. Jeanette Haregi, Communications and Engagement Manager and Public Information Officer. As you know, the Department of Airports is highlighting unsung heroes from the local aviation community through periodic short feature stories designed to not only put a spotlight on those who tirelessly serve the community, but to also help educate the community about a portion of the airports that is often overlooked. Many may realize that Camarillo and Oxnard airports serve as vital connections to the national airspace system and are home to many businesses and individual aircraft owners, all of whom contribute to the economic vitality of Ventura County. What many may not realize is that some of these individuals and businesses also play a critical role as philanthropic contributors through a variety of nonprofit organizations that work to benefit the environment, animals, local youth, emergency response, medical transportation, and more. Tonight, I eagerly share our third story in the series, focusing on the Camarillo and Oxnard chapters of the Experimental Aircraft Association, or EAA, and their Young Eagles program. On any given day, in homes throughout Ventura County, there are school-aged children playing with paper airplanes and wooden gliders, interrupted only by the sound of a real plane flying overhead. A sound that takes them outside with their eyes to the sky as they watch a small general aviation plane, jet, helicopter, or military aircraft soar above their home. They are young engineers and scientists. They are kids with a dream. In 1992, a national program was launched to help nurture those dreams and give them a way to take flight, literally and figuratively. To date, the Young Eagles program has flown more than 2.3 million kids ages 8 to 17 from throughout the country, all made possible by local organizations committed to harboring the mission of Young Eagles, a mission focused on introducing and inspiring youth about the world of aviation. Ventura County's youth have access to this program thanks to the commitment of the Camarillo Airport EAA Chapter 723 and the Oxnard Airport EAA Chapter 1469. Together, the chapters offer regular Young Eagles events targeted specifically for kids who wouldn't otherwise have access to flying in a plane, let alone learning the ins and outs of what it takes to be a pilot through simulation, remote aircraft, educational presentations, and more. The Oxnard chapter offers quarterly events with the next event slated for December 9th at Oxnard Airport. The Camarillo chapter, which has earned national recognition from the EAA, offers monthly events that also extend to Santa Paula Airport. At each event, participating youth have the opportunity to go on a flight with one of the more than 15 volunteer pilots between the two chapters. Since December 2022, both chapters have collectively flown more than 500 youth with an educational component that extends beyond the flight alone and into the world of career building through engineering and the sciences. Both chapters also offer annual flight scholarships and academic scholarships aimed at primarily supporting students from Ventura County. Other local nonprofit organizations, including the Commemorative Air Force, Civil Air Patrol, and Ventura County 99s, have jumped at the chance to get involved. Barb Filkins, a volunteer pilot for Young Eagles and members of both the Camarillo and Oxnard EAA chapters, as well as the Ventura County 99s, responded to the impact of the program, noting that the volunteer pilots often leave an event just as moved by the experience as the participants. They often come in shy and quiet, she said of the kids, maybe even a bit scared, but they come out with enthusiasm and smiles. The pilots, I think, often leave with the same kind of smile. She continued, the impact of the program is immeasurable. When you see a child who may not have thought about a career in aviation become inspired, to see it click, it's phenomenal. That's what Young Eagles does. It brings something that might seem unattainable directly to the kids and makes it real. And the pictures you see featured here are from last December's event at Oxnard Airport. And if you will humor me with a 3-minute video on the next slide, that features Young Eagles in action last December.
Hi, I'm Barb Filkins, and I kind of helped put this whole day of discovery together at Oxnard Airport. The day of discovery was intended just to be a way to allow the community, parents, and kids, specifically middle and high school students, to kind of cover. This event was really the aviation community coming together. We had both chapters of the Experimental Aircraft Association at Oxnard and Camarillo come to help fly the kids, the Young Eagles. It's a program that the EAA National has that gives kids a taste of what it is to fly in a small airplane, largely for the first time. We had the 99s, the Ventura County 99s helping. We had California Aeronautical Community brought their simulator. We even had the Mars helicopter here, scale model, doing presentations. So all in all, it's been a very great event with a lot of participation, and we had great attendance given the weather.
Leanna's in 6th grade, and he's a big airplane fan. He has like a spotting scope, and he has the app that tracks every airplane that's up there. And he's outside all the time taking videos of airplanes and pictures through his spotting scope. And he's been wanting to do this for a long time, and he's been talking about it for days now.
It was really cool. You can really feel when you like take off. You can really feel like the power and like the engine. And when you land, you can really feel like the bump of the landing gear touching. When you're up in the sky, you really feel it like drifting a little bit, especially in these like the cloudy conditions.
I was nervous, but then I was like, when I saw the view and everything, it was just like being in the air and just floating and being like an eagle.
I am volunteering for the Commemorative Air Force today, and I just got to go up with an instructor, and I was flying left seat. It was my first time. It was very exciting. I got to help with takeoff, normal flying, and landing, so yeah, it's been a great day out here today.
So again, that video I put together after last December's event, and it just shows the program in action and just the impact it has on the participants and even the parents. And it was my first event that I attended, so it was fun doing those interviews. And it's really is a phenomenal program, as Barb stated in her and when I interviewed her. So thank you all.